This is Sullivan Global Holdings. How can I help you?
In a city ruled by money, power, and ruthless ambition, one man was about to discover that love could destroy everything he spent his entire life building. But sometimes destruction becomes the beginning of redemption. Hello beautiful people, welcome back to another inspired story. Before we dive into this unforgettable journey, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and how your day is going. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, like this story, and turn on notifications because stories like this remind us that even the coldest hearts can learn how to love again. Now let's begin. Rain poured endlessly over Manhattan that night. The city lights reflected across wet streets while thunder rolled between skyscrapers like distant warning drums. Inside the top-floor office of Sullivan Global Holdings, Zane Sullivan sat alone in silence. His expensive suit jacket hung carelessly over a chair nearby. A half-finished glass of whiskey rested untouched beside him. And despite being surrounded by wealth most people could only dream about, he looked like a man carrying invisible scars no amount of money could heal. At 34 years old, Zane had everything society admired. Power, influence, luxury, control. But he had not slept peacefully in years. His employees feared him. Business rivals hated him. And the media described him as the Ice King of Wall Street. Yet none of those titles truly captured who Zane had become. Because beneath the cold exterior lived a boy who never recovered from losing his father. A boy raised on bitterness. A boy taught that trusting people only led to pain. The large office windows overlooked the glowing city below, but Zane's attention remained fixed on a small silver photo frame hidden near the back of his desk. A picture of his mother smiling softly. The only gentle thing left in his world. Suddenly, his phone rang. Unknown number. Normally he ignored calls that late. But something about the silence before the ringing stopped made him answer. Hello? For several seconds, only heavy breathing answered. Then came a terrified female voice. Zane, please help me. His entire body stiffened instantly. He recognized that voice immediately.
What's wrong?
Serafina
okay?
Holloway. The daughter of the family he blamed for ruining his life. The woman he had spent years trying to hate. Thunder crashed outside as Zane slowly stood from his chair. What happened? Her breathing shook violently. They're coming for me. Fear. Real fear. Not manipulation. Not performance. Then suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the phone. Serafina screamed. The line went dead. Silence filled the office. Zane stared at the phone motionlessly while old memories slammed violently into him. Summer galas. Stolen glances. A teenage girl laughing beneath fireworks. Then years of hatred. Funerals. Betrayal. Destroyed families. He should have ignored the call. He should have let the Holloways deal with their own problems. But deep down, one painful truth unsettled him. If Serafina was truly in danger, he could not walk away. Not this time. Within minutes, Zane stormed through the underground parking garage while his longtime friend Damon Reeves followed closely behind. You're serious? Damon asked. After everything her family did? Zane unlocked his black Aston Martin without responding. Rainwater dripped from the concrete ceiling around them. Damon sighed heavily. You spent half your life hating the Holloways. Zane finally looked at him coldly. I know exactly what I spent my life doing. The car engine roared to life. And as they disappeared into the storm-covered streets, neither man realized that one phone call was about to destroy everything Zane thought he knew about loyalty, revenge, and love. Meanwhile, across the city, Serafina Holloway hid inside the dark bathroom of her apartment with trembling hands pressed over her mouth. The lights were off. Her breathing was uneven. and blood stained the sleeve of her white sweater. Outside the bathroom door, footsteps moved slowly through the apartment. Searching. Waiting. Serafina clutched a small flash drive tightly against her chest. The truth was inside it. Enough secrets to destroy billionaires. Enough evidence to expose corruption buried for decades. Including crimes connected to her own father. Tears filled her eyes as another loud bang shook the apartment door. "Open the door," a male voice shouted. Serafina's heart nearly stopped. Because she recognized that voice too. Trevor Bennett. Her father's closest business partner. The man she trusted almost like family. And somehow, the man now trying to kill her. Long before fear entered her life, Serafina Holloway was known for kindness. Unlike most billionaire daughters raised around luxury and influence, she avoided attention whenever possible. She volunteered quietly at shelters, funded scholarship programs anonymously, and spent more time reading books than attending celebrity parties. But people often misunderstood kindness as weakness. And Serafina carried secrets nobody around her noticed. Especially the loneliness. Growing up inside the Holloway empire felt like living inside a beautiful prison. Publicly, her father Victor Holloway appeared charming and respected. Cameras loved him. Politicians praised him. Business magazines called him visionary. Privately, however, he was emotionally distant. Controlled. Obsessed with protecting the family image. After Serafina's mother died in a mysterious car accident years earlier, warmth slowly disappeared from their home completely. And although Victor loved his daughter in his own way, he buried himself in business instead of grief. Leaving Serafina emotionally alone for years. Sometimes she still replayed the memory of her mother brushing her hair gently as a child. "Never let wealth turn your heart cold," her mother once whispered softly. Serafina held on to those words desperately. Because coldness surrounded her everywhere now. Meanwhile, Zane Sullivan became exactly the kind of man his father raised him to become after their family collapse. Untouchable. Calculated. Emotionally unreachable. At Sullivan Global Holdings, employees lowered their voices whenever he walked past. Meetings felt like battlefields under his leadership. Every decision he made was sharp, efficient, and ruthless. Yet behind closed doors, exhaustion slowly consumed him. One evening after another brutal board meeting, Naomi Sinclair entered his office carrying financial reports. Naomi had worked beside Zane for years and understood him better than most people. "You need sleep," she said bluntly. "I need competent executives," Zane replied dryly. Naomi rolled her eyes. "You know normal people occasionally smile, right? I'll consider it during retirement." Despite his coldness, Naomi noticed something different after Serafina's phone call. Distraction. Restlessness. Pain. "You still care about her," Naomi said quietly. Zane's expression hardened immediately. "No. You reacted too fast for it to mean nothing." Zane stood and walked toward the window overlooking Manhattan. "She's a Holloway." But even he no longer sounded convinced by his own hatred. Because the truth was complicated. Years ago, before their families became enemies publicly, Zane and Serafina once shared a connection neither fully understood. At 18, Zane attended a charity gala hosted by both families. He remembered standing outside alone near the gardens avoiding conversations when Serafina approached carrying 2 cups of coffee. "You look miserable," she told him honestly. He almost laughed. "Almost. You don't even know me." Serafina shrugged lightly. "You still look miserable." That became the first real conversation they ever had. And somehow, over the following months, she became one of the only people capable of softening him. Until everything collapsed. A financial scandal erupted involving both families. Zane's father blamed Victor Holloway publicly. The media destroyed both companies for months. Then Zane's father died from a heart attack shortly afterward. From that day forward, hatred replaced whatever connection existed between them. Or at least that's what Zane forced himself to believe. Back in the present, Serafina sat secretly inside a small hidden motel outside the city after escaping her apartment through the fire escape hours earlier. She looked exhausted, bruised, terrified, but alive. Trevor Bennett's men were still searching for her. And the deeper truth frightened her even more. Because she had discovered financial records connecting Trevor to years of corruption, blackmail, illegal construction deals, and suspicious deaths. Including evidence connected to Zane's father. Her hands trembled while opening one file again. Payment transfers. Bribed officials. Destroyed companies. Then one final document stopped her breathing completely. Trevor Bennett ordered the financial sabotage that destroyed the Sullivan family years ago. Not Victor Holloway. Serafina covered her mouth in shock. That meant Zane spent years hating the wrong people. A tear rolled down her face. Because she knew one thing with certainty now. When Zane learned the truth, everything would change. By sunrise, the city was already turning dangerous. News spread quickly that federal investigators were quietly examining financial irregularities tied to Holloway Industries. Investors panicked. Executives denied everything publicly. And somewhere beneath the growing chaos, Trevor Bennett began hunting Serafina personally. Inside the motel room, Serafina barely slept. Every sound outside made her flinch. Every passing car felt threatening. She tried calling her father repeatedly, but Victor never answered. Fear settled deeper inside her chest with every hour. Then suddenly, a knock at the door. Her heart nearly stopped. Another knock followed. Slow. Controlled. Serafina carefully stepped backward while gripping a lamp defensively. Who is it? Silence. Then a familiar voice answered quietly. It's me. Zane. For a moment she thought she imagined it. But when she opened the door slightly, there he stood wearing a dark coat soaked from rain, eyes sharp with tension. Neither spoke immediately. Years of pain stood silently between them. Finally Zane looked at the bruise on her face. And something dangerous flashed across his expression. Who did that? Serafina swallowed hard. You actually came. I almost didn't. The honesty hurt. But strangely, it also comforted her. Before either could continue, tires screeched loudly outside the motel. Zane looked through the curtains instantly. 3 black SUVs. Trevor's men. Get down, he shouted. Gunfire exploded through the windows seconds later. Glass shattered everywhere. Serafina screamed while Zane pulled her behind the bed for cover. Chaos erupted across the tiny motel room. Zane returned fire while Damon rushed inside through the back entrance. We need to move now. Smoke filled the hallway outside. Trevor's men stormed the building aggressively. For the first time in years, Serafina saw Zane not as the cold businessman the world feared, but as a man willing to risk his life protecting her. And somehow, that realization affected her deeply. They escaped through the rear staircase moments before the motel erupted into flames behind them. Rain poured heavily as they sped through empty streets. Serafina sat trembling beside Zane in silence. Finally he spoke. Tell me the truth. She looked down at the flash drive in her hands. It wasn't my father. Zane's jaw tightened. What? The sabotage against your family. Trevor planned it. The car suddenly felt too quiet. Too small for revelations that massive. Damon looked stunned. That's impossible. Serafina shook her head weakly. I saw the records myself. Zane gripped the steering wheel harder. Years of hatred. Years of grief. Years spent blaming the wrong people. All of it suddenly cracked apart inside him. But before he could process the truth fully, Serafina whispered something even worse. There's more. Zane looked at her carefully. My mother's accident. Tears filled her eyes. I don't think it was an accident. And in that moment, the story stopped being about revenge. It became survival. Zane took Serafina somewhere nobody expected. His private estate hidden deep beyond the city. The mansion sat surrounded by towering pine trees and heavy iron gates far from reporters, executives, and enemies. Very few people even knew the property existed. Which made it the safest place possible. At first, silence dominated everything between them. Serafina stayed mostly inside the guest room recovering physically while Zane buried himself in researching Trevor's hidden financial history. But tension lingered constantly. Not just from danger. From emotions neither of them wanted to confront. One cold evening, Serafina walked downstairs unable to sleep and found Zane sitting alone beside the fireplace reading old case files. Orange flames reflected softly across his tired face. You should rest, she said quietly. So should you. She sat across from him carefully. For several awkward seconds, neither spoke. Then Serafina noticed an old scar near his wrist. What happened there? Zane looked down briefly. Car accident. Something about his expression suggested deeper pain behind the answer. My father's crash, he added quietly. Serafina's chest tightened immediately. Because she remembered attending the funeral secretly from a distance years ago. Watching Zane stand alone beside the grave looking emotionally destroyed. I'm sorry, she whispered sincerely. Zane looked at her for a long moment. And for the first time in years, he believed she truly meant it. Meanwhile, Naomi Sinclair uncovered something alarming. Trevor Bennett secretly controlled multiple judges, police officials, and media executives through blackmail payments. He's been preparing for exposure for years, Naomi explained during a strategy meeting. Victor Holloway looked exhausted. We're running out of time. Zane's expression darkened. Then we stop reacting and start hunting him. Over the following days, danger intensified everywhere. Cars followed them. Unknown numbers called repeatedly. One of Victor's longtime executives disappeared suddenly after threatening to expose Trevor publicly. Fear spread quickly. Yet strangely, emotional closeness between Zane and Serafina deepened through the chaos. Late-night conversations slowly replaced awkward silence. They spoke about childhood memories. Regrets. Loneliness. Dreams they abandoned years ago. One night during a thunderstorm, the estate lost electricity completely. Candles illuminated the dark living room softly while rain hammered the windows outside. Serafina laughed quietly while trying to light another candle. I forgot how creepy storms feel without power. Zane smirked faintly. That's probably the most normal thing you've said all week. She looked genuinely shocked. Was that a joke? Don't get used to it. But she smiled anyway. And seeing that smile unexpectedly affected him more than it should have. For a few brief moments, the world outside disappeared. No corruption. No danger. No family wars. Just two wounded people slowly remembering what peace felt like. Then everything shattered again. Naomi burst into the room pale with shock. We have a problem. Zane stood immediately. What happened? Naomi looked toward Serafina carefully. It's Damon. Zane frowned. What about him? Naomi hesitated. Then quietly answered. He's been meeting with Trevor Bennett. The moment Naomi said Damon's name, the entire room changed. It wasn't just tension anymore. It was betrayal. Zayn stood completely still, as if the air itself had tightened around his chest. The fire in the fireplace crackled softly, but even that warmth suddenly felt distant. "Say that again," Zayn said quietly. Naomi didn't flinch. "I tracked encrypted calls from his private line. Multiple meetings. Always late at night. Always routed through offshore servers tied to Trevor Bennett." Serafina slowly stepped back, her face pale. "That doesn't make sense," she whispered. "He was with us when the motel was attacked." Zayn didn't respond immediately. His eyes had already changed. Not anger yet. Something colder. Something heavier. Doubt. Damon Reeves was not just an employee or an ally. He was the closest thing Zayn had ever had to a brother. They built companies together. Survived financial collapses together. Buried Zayn's father together. And now, Naomi placed a tablet on the table and played a recorded audio file. Damon's voice filled the room. "Zayn trusts me too much. That's what makes this easy." Silence fell like a falling blade. Serafina's hand flew to her mouth. "No," she whispered. "That can't be real." But Zayn didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't react the way people expected. Because deep down, betrayal wasn't new to him. He had just never expected it from someone that close. Finally, he spoke. "When did this start?" Naomi hesitated. "After your father died." That hit harder. Zayn slowly sat down, the weight of the truth pressing into him like gravity had doubled. For years, Damon stood beside him while he built his empire from ashes. Years of loyalty. Years of trust. Years of shared grief. And all of it, possibly calculated. Serafina moved closer carefully. "Zayn, we don't know everything yet. There could be a reason." He cut her off softly. "There's always a reason." But his voice didn't sound angry. It sounded tired. Outside, thunder rolled again, as if the world itself was reacting to the revelation. Naomi continued carefully. "There's more." Zayn looked up slowly. Naomi turned the tablet toward him. A second file opened. This time, financial transfers. Millions moving between Damon Reeves and accounts linked directly to Trevor Bennett. Serafina stepped closer to read it. Her breath caught instantly. "Why would he do this?" she whispered. Zayn stood again, walking toward the window. Rain streaked down the glass, distorting the city lights beyond. His reflection looked unfamiliar. "I thought I knew him," Zayn said quietly. Naomi shook her head. "You did. People just change when money or fear is involved." Serafina looked conflicted. "But he risked his life for us at the motel." Zayn turned slightly. "That's what makes betrayal effective," he said. "It always comes from someone you'd never suspect." The silence that followed was heavy. Not just confusion, but emotional collapse. Because now nothing felt stable anymore. Not trust. Not history. Not even truth. That night, Serafina couldn't sleep. She stood near the balcony of her room, staring into the storm outside. The estate felt different now. Colder. Like it was hiding secrets inside its walls. Footsteps approached behind her. Zayn. He didn't speak at first. Just stood beside her. For a long moment, they both watched the rain. Finally, Serafina whispered. "Are you going to confront him?" Zayn didn't answer immediately. "I don't know what I'm going to do." That honesty surprised her. Because Zayn Sullivan always had answers. Always controlled outcomes. always moved like the world was predictable. But now he looked human. Serafina turned slightly toward him. I don't believe Damon is fully what that recording shows. Zane glanced at her. Why? Because I've seen enough evil to recognize when someone is pretending to be worse than they are. Zane studied her face. Then quietly said, You still trust people too easily. She gave a faint, sad smile. And you trust no one at all. That landed between them like truth neither could argue with. A long silence followed. Then Zane spoke again, softer this time. When I was younger, I thought loyalty meant staying no matter what. Serafina listened closely. But life taught me something else, he continued. Sometimes loyalty is just fear wearing a nicer name. Serafina lowered her eyes. That's not always true. Zane looked at her. Then explained Damon. She had no answer. And that silence said everything. Across the city, Damon Reeves sat alone in a dim apartment staring at his phone that wouldn't stop vibrating. Missed calls from Zane. Messages from Naomi. He didn't answer. Because he already knew what was coming. A shadow moved behind him. Damon didn't turn. You're early, he said quietly. Trevor Bennett stepped into the light. Calm. Controlled. Almost satisfied. You look stressed, Trevor said casually. Damon exhaled slowly. It's falling apart. Trevor smiled faintly. No. It's progressing exactly as planned. Damon finally looked at him. You told me Zane would never find out. Trevor tilted his head. I also told you loyalty is negotiable. Damon's jaw tightened. You're using me. Trevor stepped closer. I've been using you since the beginning. The words hit harder than expected. Damon looked down briefly. For a moment, something inside him cracked. Then quietly he asked, Do you even plan to keep your promise? Trevor didn't answer directly. Instead, he placed a folder on the table. Inside were documents. Blackmail material. Proof of Damon's involvement in financial transfers. His name tied to corruption. His freedom hanging by threads. Damon went silent. Trevor's voice softened dangerously. You don't get to walk away now. Not after everything you've done. That was the trap. And Damon realized too late that he had never been an ally. Only a tool. Back at the estate, Zane received an encrypted message just before dawn. One line. From Damon. I didn't have a choice. Zane stared at it for a long time. Serafina watched him from across the room. What does it say? He didn't answer immediately. Then finally. He's meeting Trevor again. Serafina stepped forward quickly. Then we can still stop this. Zane shook his head slowly. It's already bigger than stopping it. He looked at her. And for the first time since the story began, there was something dangerous in his calmness. Not rage. Not confusion. Clarity. They didn't just betray me, he said quietly. They built everything around me so I would fall exactly where they want me. Serafina felt a chill run through her. What are you saying? Zane turned toward the window again. Outside, the city looked peaceful. Too peaceful. I'm saying, he replied softly, this was never just about my empire. A pause. It was about destroying me completely. And in that moment, the midpoint revelation landed fully. The enemy wasn't reacting anymore. He was already inside the system. Already ahead. Already winning. And Zane Sullivan had just realized the war he thought he was fighting had been over long before he ever started. Top of form. And that brings us to the end of episode 1. What started as hatred has now turned into betrayal, secrets, and a dangerous truth that's bigger than Zayn ever imagined. Nothing is what it seemed, and the real war is only just beginning. But here's the real question. Can Zayn still save Seraphina when the enemy may already be inside his own circle? Or will everything he trusted collapse completely? We'll find out in episode 2, where the truth gets darker, the betrayals cut deeper, and love is pushed to its breaking point. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment below what you think will happen next. I really want to know your predictions. And most importantly, stay tuned for the next episode, because everything is about to change.